Okay, I wanted to get straight into this new movie entitled The Invitation. It came out last weekend to Modest, a modest theatrical opening. And I've seen that on Rotten Tomatoes and throughout the online reviews. This has gotten several negative reviews. At this time, I believe it's at 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I wanted to talk about it because I definitely didn't have that negative reaction to the movie. So, the movie The Invitation is directed by Jessica M. Thompson and it stars Natalie Emanuel and Thomas Dorothy. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, who are Evelyn, Evie, and Walt. So the story is about Evelyn. You learn in the beginning of the movie that she's an orphan and she's struggling as a waitress. One day she gets this gift box from her friend Grace, who I love that character. And she sees in the box that there is a genealogy kit called DNA Kit. I know, original. And she sends in this information. And based on the DNA kit, she finds out that she has some relatives in the UK. And one of her relatives, named Oliver, meets up with her and asks her to come with him over to Europe to meet the rest of the family. At first, she's kind of hesitant about it. And her friend Grace is telling her, "Girl, this may not be a good idea," but she does it. She goes overseas, she meets her family, and when she gets there, she meets the head guy named Walt, and she starts to develop a relationship with him. At first, it starts off with him being apologetic about something that happens at his home. The relationship starts to bud. At first, they're just talking, getting to know each other, and then they start to develop more of a relationship. And eventually, it appears that they're into each other. And then she's there to see a ceremony, to see a wedding. And when we get to the wedding, chaos ensues. And that's all I'll say. I'm pretty sure if you've seen the commercial, you kind of see where things go left. So I'm trying to keep it light to avoid spoilers for people who may be like me who try to avoid commercials of movies they plan on seeing because nowadays all commercials just have spoilers in them. So, the positives of the movie, I would say, are the story itself, how she goes from being in the United States and agreeing to go to Europe to meet her extended family. I think the filmmakers do a good job of explaining that she's more likely to do something that we maybe would not because she has lost both of her parents and she had lost her mother recently to cancer. So she's in a vulnerable state. She doesn't have another parent. She doesn't have siblings. Her only friend that we're aware of is one friend, Grace, here. So it makes sense that she will want to feel connected to other family, given that she doesn't have anyone. And I think it's also believable the relationship that develops between herself and Walt. They didn't have it go from 0 to 10. They showed how he slowly became more likable to her, like from his introduction into the movie to the things that he did throughout to lower her guard and make her more, willing to get closer to him. I think he did a good job of that. And I think the crescendo of getting up to what causes the issue, I think everything from the beginning of the movie up to that point uh, is very well done. For me, it reminds me of that Guillermo del Toro movie, Crimson Peak, the 2015 movie that came out. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, it's a lot going on. When is the horror going to start? It was kind of giving me that feeling when I was watching the movie. And then the situation starts. I'll just say that. I would say the negative side of it is that once it starts, it gets a little boring. Well, not boring, but it gets just kind of into that, oh, here goes the action part. But I must say, I'm more of a romance romantic movie type of person, except for Halloween. I love those movies. I can watch them at any time. Halloween, The Scream. But to avoid a tangent, I love horror movies. But in this case, I was in a romantic mood because of the romantic first hour or so of this movie. So when things are changing, like, oh man, this is just flipped. So we're not going to see that romantic part anymore. And without giving anything away, the resolution was very interesting. Um, and I was thinking it was one thing, but it was another. I'm trying to avoid spoilers in case people plan on watching the movie, which I think you should. So, in terms of the scares, there were definitely a few jump scares throughout it, which at times I'm like, oh, what's about to just pop out of nowhere, or where's the big boom? I always expect to hear that. Trying to see, I didn't really have too many negatives with the movie, so that's why I was so shocked by the uh, percentage that it has overall. Usually, when I see a low percentage, I'm like, okay, I'm going to avoid that. But I remember seeing the commercial and saying, oh, I want to check this out and see how we get from point A to point B and how is this resolved. So for me, I would give it an 8 out of 10 because I enjoyed it and I actually plan on buying it on DVD. It's one of those movies I think I can definitely watch on repeat, and I really enjoyed it. So, if you've watched the movie, what do you think? Are you more in line with the online reviews that are saying this movie isn't good, or are you feeling some other kind of way about it? So, I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents about it since I think the movie's getting a bad rap so far.